And so this training is about, as I said, first of all, concerns the diaspora. But if you want to work with the diaspora or even anyone around the world, then it is good for you because it will teach you what the expectations are in terms of, planning planning practices, which is somehow universal, but obviously it depends also on the context. You're gonna have to adapt that to your context. And today we'll be talking about how you can adapt those planning practices to investment when investing through families, friends, and institutions in Africa. So this training will focus more on chapter 7 of my book that was released in March 2025. And the book is Stories of African Diaspora, Investing Through Friends, Families, and Institutions in Africa, How to Avoid Mistakes, Risk, and Failures. So if you don't have a copy yet, you can get a copy on Amazon. But for those who are comfortable with French, we will be also releasing the French version very, very soon. So really, before we dive into the training, I played a very short video at the beginning. I don't know if you saw it. Did anybody see the video that I played or heard it? Did you hear it or did you see it? You can unmute your mic and say a word. Okay. I thought you saw it. If you didn't see it, maybe we'll play it at the end of the presentation. But Panga. We have Panga institutions, but we also have Panga, which is a brand, and we kind of now putting that into, it's coming to reality. So we're gonna be showing you some of the stuff that we have as far as the brand portion is concerned. But really quickly, so if you want to plan for a project, you want to invest in Africa through your family, friends, or institutions. So this is a very specific type of challenge because we live far away from our homelands, from the project side. So if your project is taking place in Burkina Faso or in Ghana, in Ethiopia, then and you are in the United States, you are facing unique challenges. And but how do you avoid those challenges? You will have to make sure you follow the planning steps. Somebody who is there can, take a chance to not be careful, but you being far away, you need to be careful as to how you approach your project. So we're gonna go really quick through 15 project steps or practices that you can follow, and that will help you actually be better off at the end of the project or during your execution phase. So remember, this is planning. Okay, so you have planning and then you have management. So planning is, when you start um, putting everything together. So basically, you are not managing, you're not really executing any activities yet, except for the planning activities. So these are different things, and I want you to make the to be able to distinguish between the two before we get go. So planning is different from management. So when we talk about, like, especially when I teach contracting, we talk about contract planning, contract administration, which includes somehow contract management. So those are different, very different ways of approaching the project and different phases of the project. So now, when you want to invest in Africa, what is the first thing that you need? So you need to pick a project manager. Who is a project manager? So the project manager is the main person that will be working with you, that will be overseeing the project. He is the person that will know everything about your project the same way you know about your project. And so this is, and the reason why this is very important is because most of the time when the diaspora wanna, they have a project that they wanna implement in Africa, they can just some of us may just call a brother, or you call your mother, your father, and you say, hey, I wanna do this. Can you have this person do that? So that's not enough. What you need is you're gonna be very specific. I want a project manager, and I'm going to explain why you need to pick a specific person and tell that person you are the project manager. So number two, after you pick your project manager, now you need to build a project team, because you have the manager. He's going to know everything about your project, but you need to build a team, because that one person will not be able to carry on the project alone. So you need to build a project team, and you and that person are going to talk about who can be part of the team. And so most of the time, one of the mistakes that a lot of people make is, you know, just pick those people who are available and put them on the project team. And I will say that that's not a good way to build a project team. So you may have brothers, you may have sisters, you may have cousins and uncles, but not each one of them is good for your project. Even if they're not doing anything,
Không,
they're
ta lại cái
free.
tí tôi nhung.
So they're
Alo.
not necessarily good for your project.
Kamu ada
So
kan cái tí tôi.
the person in the diaspora
Cái đó này uang kia được rồi sih.
and the project
Atau
manager
enggak kira.
need to work together to pick. Let me mute a few people, sorry. Yeah, you need to work together to pick the project team, which is people who really understand the project, people that you can rely on, people that are serious, that can be part of your project. So the reason why you need to do that is because it's difficult to run a project. Even if you were there in Africa, it's difficult for everybody to run a project. So that's why in the planning phase, what I'm talking about is in the planning phase. So you need to identify those people that will be able to work with your project manager and yourself in a way that you can reduce any, conflict. So for example, if you know that between you and one of your brothers or cousins, sisters, there is always, disagreements. You might want to be very careful about putting that person on the team, because at the end of the day, it's going to be, create some issues down the road. All right, number three, stating the objectives and expectations. I personally like this one very much, because one thing that can also happen, here is what happened to a lot of people in the diaspora, because we are here, and at some point we really want to do things in Africa. So I want to build a house. I want to open a restaurant. I want to start my own taxi company, or transportation company. Those are things that the diaspora want to do. However, what happened is, once we get the money, we just say, hey, I'm ready for the project. I'm gonna send you the money, or I'm gonna buy the truck, the cars and stuff like that, or we're gonna buy the appliances that we need for the restaurant and things like that. So the diaspora usually rush into the logistic, like the materials and stuff, but what they don't do is tell to the people back in Africa, tell them clearly what they want. What do you want? The fact that you want to have a restaurant is not specific. It's not specific. What are your objectives? And also the expectations. So these are things that you need to lay out in your from the beginning, in the planning phase. Remember, you are not executing, implementing anything yet. You are just putting down things. And I advise, that you write all of these down. In the book, I talk about a project charter. You can have a project charter, and it can be a simple document That allows you to tell your project team, the project manager, what you want to achieve down the road. So that's in the planning phase. You write down your objectives and the expectations. So you can and let me, what happened usually is people start one thing, right? In the book, we had one case of some guy, some person in Ghana. So the diaspora person, he lives in Europe. He wanted to implement to run a project about dogs, um, breeding, like working on a specific dog type, dog breed. And when he started, somebody else told him, no, 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 don't do dogs. Let's do pigs. And he changed his mind to work with that person on pigs, and the project ended up not being well, being a failure, because initially that's not what he wanted, but because he was not specific, he ended up, working on something different. And I said I like this because if you are clear on your objectives and expectations, it is difficult for you to let somebody tell you what is best, what is not good. Because what happened with friends and families is you send them the money, and when you send them the money, they'll come back tomorrow and tell you, oh, you know what? I think if we invest in this area, in this specific thing, this specific activity is going to be better than what you are proposing. So a lot of people, and by doing that, they will spend the money on something that you did not plan for. And at the end of the day, you no longer have control on that. That's why it's important to have your objectives and your expectations from the beginning, and do your best to stick to your objectives. All right, number 4, set the authority with clear boundaries for the project team members. So I talk about having the project manager. I hope you're following me. You have the project manager, and then you have the project team. The manager is the one on top, at the top, with the authority to oversee everybody else. So the roles need to be very clear. The responsibilities need to be clear. Okay. And here is what the responsibilities of the manager are. The second person in the team, here is your responsibility. The third person, here are your responsibilities, and so on and so forth. That is very important, especially remember, we are talking about investing with family, friends, partners in Africa. So if you are working with your family and you don't have clear boundaries, everybody is going to believe that they have the authority over the project, that they can manage the money, the funds the way they want, that um, they can order others to do things the way they want. And because it's a family, that can very quickly create a conflict and ended up having a negative impact on your project. That's why it's very important that you are clear on the boundaries, the responsibilities. If I want you, John, I want you to, your job is to wake up in the morning, go get all the groceries that are needed for the restaurant. Your job is to go get the water. That's how you should plan it. It is very specific, and that way it is easy to manage. Number 5, establish the budget and funds necessary to complete the project. This is also important because in the a lot of people in the diaspora, you either they fund their projects with their own money, right? So if they have a job or they are self-employed, they they fund their project using money that they derive from those sources of income. And so most of the time, it's when we run projects, it doesn't mean that we are 100% ready with the budget. And we don't have to be ready, but we need to be very careful with the planning. So you need to make sure that, you know, what you need to support the project, at least for 1 year or 2 years. If, the project was not, bringing in any income, like any profit, you need to plan for at least 1 year to 2 years of budget to be able to support the project. And that's because, there are sometimes unexpected events that and you might want to account for that as well. So make sure you have a budget, that you also have a solid source of income before you can actually go into the project. So this is part of the planning phase, that you need to address this in the planning phase. It doesn't come when you start, working on the project, or the project is already ongoing and now you're trying to figure out where to get the funds and so on and so forth. Number six, a team training plan. This is very important. So remember, most of the time, the diaspora is going to be working with a team of people that a lot of them will not have a lot of experience. So part of your strategy, your planning strategy should be that, you have some type of training in place. It doesn't have to be like a full-blown training, but you need to have a way where you keep training the team members and saying, hey, we have achieved this. We have achieved step one. We are now in step two. This is how we need to scale up. And I want you to have to be more focused. And here is how you can be more focused. So if there needs additional skills, you can work on that, on how you can get them ready with those higher skills to work on the project. Okay, so let me give you an example. If you have, that if you have somebody, driving your taxi, right? A taxi driver. He starts, and for example, he makes like, maybe say, like $200 a day. That's what he's making at the beginning. And at some point, he makes up to $400, $1,000 a day. So that's now becoming significant. You now need to train him on how to manage larger sum of money. So this is just a simple example for you to see why a training plan is needed. Number seven, reliable suppliers. So here, when you have a business or a project going on, whether you're building a house, let's just say you are building a house, and you are working with somebody. Your house is in your village, and you are working with somebody in the city, and that person is supplying you with the materials and everything that is necessary to build the house. So what you need to do at the planning phase is identify that supplier, that supplier that will be providing everything, and make sure that they have enough of what you need. Because sometimes people can tell you, oh, even if you need like 1,000 of them, I have them. Meanwhile, they only have 50, or they have 100. So if that's the case, at some point your project is going to stall. You're gonna come to a stop where you can't continue, because you already paid the money to the person, but they're not able to provide you with the materials when you need them. And what that does is, your project takes time to be completed. And while you're waiting, you keep also investing in that project. And so that's going to be a waste of your money, your resources, and your time. So again, at the planning phase, you need to have identify some suppliers. Don't just pick one, pick up to three or four, to make sure that if the first one is not up to the task, that you have someone else to rely on. All right, I'm gonna go a little bit faster because we're running out of time. Specifications for every product and service. So let's say I just talk about, having a supplier supplying you with the materials that you need to build a house. But we all know that if you want to build a house and you want the house to be good, you want quality work, you need to use some good good material. And one way to have that is to go by specifications. Specifications means that you for everything you need, you have, you are specific on what you need. So you can say, for example, I want you to use this what example can I use? I guess sometimes the easiest way to do it is just use a cell phone. Let's say if I wanted to use a cell phone for a business, I will say I want my phone to be Samsung. I want it to a new Samsung. I want it to be from the year 2025, and I want it to be made in let's say I want it to be made in Ghana. I don't want any Samsung that was made in China or maybe in Europe. So the specific that's specification um that's basically what specifications means. And why is that important for the diaspora? If you do not do that, people are going to use any type of material for your projects. Whatever they find, it is cheap. If they can save some money on that, that's what they're going to use on your project, and you don't want that. That's why when you go in the planning phase, you have those specifications and you send them to the project manager and you talk to him until we have those specifications, until those conditions are met. There is no project. I'm not going to invest the money in it. And you make sure at the planning phase that you have that already. Number nine, quick analysis of the environment and conditions. So that's sometimes the diaspora take it for granted. They believe that they know everything, or they only rely on what people tell them that they take it as the gospel, but that should not be the case. So, in general, you need to also try to understand the the environment. I think there is this analysis method that maybe a lot of you know is the SWOT analysis, which the S here means strength, W means weaknesses, the O means opportunities, and the T is threat. So what that means is, um, let's say my project is somewhere in Nigeria, right? I'm going to try to understand that specific region. What are the strengths? What are the opportunities down in that area that will allow me to be successful? And what are the weaknesses? What are some of the threats? Is it, do they have bad roads? Do they have, security issues? And how are those going to impact my project? So, and that's like a macro level, but at the lowest level, you can also run those type of analysis. If you are doing your project in a specific city or even with your family, you can just apply this method and see what are your chances of success. All right. And number 10 is the SMART objectives for the project team members. This is also very important, very, very important. And if you want to, take something from this training, just remember this one. You can even try to apply it to your daily life, which is the SMART objectives. I know it is, everybody knows it. It is popular, but in practice, only a few people are able to actually do it, to implement it. So being specific about your project, I talk about, having the objectives. Measurable. Are your objectives measurable? Are they achievable? Are they relevant? Are they time bound? Time bound here means, you have to have a specific time. If you are building a house and you say, I'm going to finish building the house in 10 years, that's not a successful way. That's not efficient. All right. So you're gonna have, it's gonna be time bound. You're gonna say, I want the project to be completed within 1 year, for example. So specific here means, what do you really want to achieve? So let's say, take the example of somebody who wants to open a restaurant. Something specific is, the idea of a restaurant. So I want to build a restaurant. I want to run a restaurant. And in that restaurant, I want to sell fish. What I want, my restaurant is about selling fish, and that's it. So that's being specific. So measurable, that means you say, okay, I want to be able to sell 500 fish a day. That's something that can be measurable. Now you need to think about it. Is it achievable? It's 500. Can you sell 500 dishes, of fish that you're making a day? If it's not, then you may say, okay, I think 150 is reasonable. Okay. And how is that relevant to your overall, project? And you can say, I wanna be able to do that. As I said, you can say a week or something like that, or a month. And or a month, you can say, I want to sell like 1,500 fish, dishes of fish. But yeah, that's what smart objectives means. Just being able to put that, to be specific with numbers and the time within which you want to get your project done. And remember, this is at the planning phase. Let me remember you. You don't do that when your project is already running and going on. You do this at the beginning, planning phase. Again, you submit this to your project manager and say, hey, is this something that will be doable? And they say yes. And together you adopt this as your part of your project charter. All right, number 11, identify your customer base. So we talk about the project, uh, uh, but it can be also, if it's a business, then you're gonna be looking at customers. But if it's a project like building a house, that, what you'll be identifying is the people that can really be helpful for you to achieve, to build your house. But if we're talking about business, you might wanna think about people, the customers, the customer base, who is going to be your customer base. So sometimes I think we make the confusion too between the how many customers we can get based on the population, uh, but also we forget the fact that how many people that you will actually get, and what are your strategies for getting that number of customers. Are you going to be talking to, are you gonna do word of mouth? Are you going to be giving free food at the beginning? And why would you be targeting customer A instead of customer B? If you go to the north part, why is it the north, people in the north will be more likely to buy your food than people in the west? That's very important, because even though you might have more people in the west, they may not be interested in your product. Only the people in the north may be interested. So, talking about customer base, you can consider a whole country to be your customer base, but that not everybody in that country is actually going to buy everything that you put up in the market. And remember, you also have the competition. So you need to also understand this at the beginning, at the planning phase, and account for it in your planning. Number 12, that's my favorite: salaries, compensation, incentives for each project team member. So you're working with your family members, your friends, uh, your partners, your cousins, your brothers, your sisters on your project. Part of in your project team, you have, a little bit of those in your project team. So how do you pay them? Do you just consider them as people that can work for free for you, or do you put in place a system of pay? Because if you don't have a good way, a convincing way of paying them, the next opportunity that comes, they're going to get, to jump on that opportunity if it pays more, if it pays better than your opportunity. So than your business, than what you're giving them. What a lot, most of the time, what the diaspora does, from the cases that we have, I think a lot of people in the diaspora, they're only sending money, everyone, once, and then, and I paid. You give them something today, and you wait for a month. I mean, for 2 months or 3 months before giving them something. So that's very difficult. So what we can also include here is incentives. What else are you giving them? Are you giving them food? Are you helping them with transportation? What else are you helping them with? So you need to also, if possible, you need to also, in your planning, you need to include that and tell them, here is how I'm going to be paying you. If you're not going to be paying them, what else are you going to be, what is something that will be motivating for them? How are you gonna convince them that it is worth it to work on your project if they're not paid? So is it that you're gonna give them part of the business, or what do you promise them? And it has to be something tangible, not just, talking or promises. So very important here. You need to figure out how you're going to pay people, how you're gonna compensate them. All right, I think I replicated this here twice. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so number 14 here, it's avoid scope creep and gold plating. I kind of alluded to that a little bit. What is the time here? Sorry, I we started a little bit late. So allow me to finish in a few minutes. So avoid scope creep and gold plating here. What are those? What does it mean? Scope creep means basically you go in with the goal to 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 launch a taxi company, for example, and you get there and somebody tells you, oh, you know what? Why don't you, open a restaurant? Why don't you buy motorbikes? That will be um, more profitable for you. And then you start your car company, and 2 months later, you decide that, okay, I'm going to add some motorbikes to it. And you add the motorbikes, and 3 months later, you say, let me just add bicycles. You add bicycles. And then, so what you're doing is you keep adding to the project, to the business that you plan for. You are adding more things, adding more things, adding more things. So that's dangerous, because what you're doing is increasing the workload for your project team and also increasing the expenses for yourself. So remember, we talk about the budget. So if you planned for a taxi company and now you have to add motorbikes, you have to add bicycles, which you did not budget for in the beginning. So that means at some point you're going to get drained financially, energy wise, and also your team is going to be drained as well. And so the whole thing can come crumbling. So that's why it's important to avoid the creeping. And I talk about having your objectives at the beginning. If you are very specific about your objectives, it's going to avoid you getting into this step. So gold plating is basically people who want to be perfect, right? You know, they want to be perfect, but in the process, they are spending money to try to be perfect when in fact it is not necessary for the project or the business. So remember this as well. It's very important. Last, do your due diligence. This goes back to the SWOT analysis that I mentioned, like your knowing the strength, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. So a lot of us in the diaspora, even though sometimes we know what we want, a lot of the projects that we do come from advice, it's advice from people who are back home, because we have to also uh, agree that sometimes they understand the realities, the conditions on the ground better than us. And so a lot of our ideas come from them, and they suggest things to us, and we are willing to do them. But doing your due diligence is asking as many relevant questions to them to understand what's going on. So, just because somebody suggests something, a good idea or a good project to you is not enough for you to start investing in that project. So you should ask questions. Sometimes the people we talk to, and, talking about family, friends, they are not necessarily professionals in the things that they are proposing. So what you should do is also make sure you talk to professionals, talk to people who have experience in what you want to do, because they can give you advice, and they can lead you in the right direction, because the family, as I said, is not necessarily the place where you have the expertise. They might want you to do good. They might want you to invest in a specific area, but they may not know what the consequences are, or they may not know what the uh, difficulties are in the complexities of that area. They only know that there are people doing it and they are successful, but they do not have the inner workings of it. So I think these are the 15 steps that I wanted to share, the 15 practices. This is not just for the diaspora. I try to adapt it to the context of the diaspora. But I will tell you, this is what the big companies that you see out there, big organizations, that's what they use when they are planning their projects. So I will say thank you for everybody who joined today and stay until this time. And I will open it up. If anyone has a question, we will take one question before we close. Any questions? No questions? All right, so let me ask a question if I can have an answer. Um, can anybody maybe tell me one thing that you took away or that you liked about the presentation today of the 15 practices?
All right. Let me say something. My name is Barnabas Kirui from the city of Dallas, Texas. Can you hear me, Professor?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Yes,
Hi,
so
brother.
so thank you. I learned I did learn a lot, but the one I wanted to talk about is to say that I took away is what you called the scope creep, which my understanding is, and I say that because I became a victim one time whereby you want to build a house and then along the way somebody's telling you, oh, if you had an extension this way, it could be good for your in-laws and these kind of people. And before you know it, my uncle did build a house and then it ended up being something more than beyond what he wanted, the phase, because he kept adding up a room. So I've realized, I think that is a very good takeaway to know that once you do your due diligence, you don't want to keep changing the plan, to fit narratives, which sometimes is what we hear from other people. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. That's actually a great, great, great takeaway. Again, as a diaspora, we don't want to do that. We want to make sure we are closing on the projects, not extending them, opening them to, you know, longer times. All right, thank you. Any other takeaway? All right, guys. Before we leave, I wanted to also share that I want to just post on the chat here how you can join us. We are on Facebook, we are on TikTok, YouTube, and there is a website where you can join us. And if you want to talk to us, there is a link here that you can use as well. And we have our weekly Zoom link is also included here. You can save that so that way it is easy for you to join us every week. We're going to decide on the topic for next Wednesday. We kind of have an idea, but we will update you as soon as possible. All right, everybody. I know a lot of you, some of you are in Africa and it's late. Thank you for staying up. As I said, the goal of this meeting, our objective is to make sure that you have a place where you can go and get some information and grow your in your practices, in your way of thinking, in your approach, because there is a lot going on nowadays and you may be missing on the important things and focusing on the things that are not really important to you, that are not going to change your life. So as you tune in here, also remember that this is a network for you, if you have a question, do not hesitate to reach out to us. We'll be happy to talk to you. All right, guys, thank you so much. Have a good night. Have a good rest of your day for those of you who are here in the United States or elsewhere. And good night. Bye bye.
Thank you.